Okay. I'm sorry, I missed that. We're ready to go? Okay, let's begin the meeting. This is the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Lehigh County Authority. The date is February 8th, 2021. We are holding this meeting via Zoom because of the pandemic, COVID-19, and everybody's staying safe in remote facilities virtually. So let's go to calling the roll call of the board members, followed by staff, and then any public, please.
Okay. Roll call of the board members. Start with Brian Noggle.
Present.
Scott Bieber.
Here.
Dick Bonner.
Here.
Norma Cusick.
Here.
Ted Lyons.
Here.
Kevin Baker.
Here.
Linda Rosenfeld.
Here.
Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Amir Famili.
Present.
All right, we have all 9 board members present today. And we have Solicitor Mike Gall from King Spry here on the call.
Hello.
And then we have staff, myself, Lisa Gross, Ed Klein, John Parsons, Chris Mullen, Chuck Volk, Sue Sampson, Andrew Moore, Phil DePoe, Mark Bowen, Lisa Miller, and Todd Marion. We also have Amy Kunkel on the call. She's a staff member who will be presenting one of the topics for today, or helping to present that topic. And then we have Brian Chamberlain and Jennifer McKenna from the City of Allentown Office of Compliance on the call, and Amanda Schumacher from Wharton Law Firm.
Okay, thank you very much. We did receive our packet of information electronically. I guess we had a snowstorm at the time when it was supposed to be mailed out, but we could not get in the office. So everybody should have had adequate time to review the packet electronically. We also did get an email from, since the last meeting from Liesel that further explained the hardship fund cash flows. So I hope everybody received that as well. We'll now look at the agenda. Do we have any corrections, additions, deletions, and any need for executive session?
Thank you. We have no changes to the published agenda for today. However, we would like to have an executive session following the close of this meeting to discuss matters of personnel.
Okay, and we also have, following that meeting, there will be another meeting of the Committee for Strategic Planning to kick that back off. Yeah. We're going to do that separately. And there's the members of that committee are Amir, myself, and Norma from the board, and Liesel from staff. And I don't know if you're planning on having anybody else, but we have to be limited to the 3 board members for such a meeting. It will not be available publicly. Committee meeting. All right. So we have an executive session that'll be with regard to personnel issues.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. All right. Next, we'll review the minutes of the meeting from January 25th, 2021. Mr. Secretary.
I have one very small comment. It appears on page 3. Line 3, I think the space at the end of the line should include the word the same form attached to the resolution. Other than that, I have no suggestions and would recommend that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I take it we have a motion from Dick to approve the minutes, and do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Norma. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
This is Scott. I abstain.
Yeah, I might have to abstain too. I can't remember. I might have missed the last meeting. Ted.
Okay, Ted and Scott abstained from the vote. Okay, thank you. The motion passed. At this time, we open up the floor to any public comments on any items that are not on the agenda. Anybody from the public wish to comment?
I have no comment.
Thank you, Brian. Moving on to action items, discussion items, we have one under Finance Administration. It's the LCA 2020 Action Plan Status Update and Vision for 2021 is a discussion topic.
All right, thank you. For that topic, I do have a presentation that was emailed to the board about a half an hour or so ago, and also posted on our website. So anyone who is not able to view the screen can look at it that way. And I will go ahead and share my screen. What we would like to do for this presentation is just spend a little time going through our 2020 goals that we had established around this time last year, and discuss how we did, and look ahead for 2021, what we're planning to focus on in the next 11 months or so remaining in the year. So I do this every year at the beginning of the year to give the board an update of our goal setting process. I won't spend a lot of time on the introduction because we kind of review this material every year, but wanted to start by saying that we do set our goals around the Effective Utility Management Framework. That is a program that was established many years ago by EPA, the American Water Works Association, and several other industry-leading associations, essentially establishing the 10 attributes of an effectively managed utility and putting a framework together around how we set goals and prioritize. So back in 2017, we did an internal assessment of our work in these 10 different attribute areas. And the assessment was really along two different continuum. What's most important for LCA, as well as how are we doing, what's our performance look like? And in establishing priorities, what we're looking for are those items that fall in the yellow box shown here as the top priority. These are areas of the organization or areas of or attributes of our performance that are most important and also need the most improvement. And then focus on those areas first, and then other priorities falling from there. This was an internal assessment that we did with the management group, and from that assessment, we selected 4 primary areas to focus on. And again, I'm going back to 2017 because what came out of this work was a 3-year action plan, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And that made up what we called our LCA 2020 action plan. So we selected these 4 areas: product quality, financial viability, infrastructure stability, and then employee and leadership development. From those 4 areas, we established these 3-year action plans. I don't want to go into it in a lot of detail because we've shared this with you over the years. Just want to put it up on the screen as an example of what our action plan looked like. This particular one that's showing on the screen was our 3-year action plan related to product quality. And the focus area for that one was on the elimination of sanitary sewer overflows and Clean Water Act compliance. And you can see 2018, 2019, and 2020, we had a series of cascading goals and targets that we were working on meeting. In 2020, we had several things we wanted to accomplish, and we did accomplish many of the things listed here. There's certainly some things that we did not accomplish. But this was the framework that we've been working on for goal setting for the last 3 years. So rather than get into the details of all of our action plan items, because it's many pages long and it is quite detailed, we had a working list of those most critical goals that we wanted to achieve in 2020, coming from that LCA 2020 plan. So they're listed here, just with a simple color coding kind of marker on them to show where we think we landed by the end of the year. So we have two that are marked as green, meaning that we achieved what we wanted to in 2020. We did achieve the settlement agreement with the city of Allentown. We also were successful in completing a regional sewer capacity plan that was submitted to DEP in September and moving forward on the steps that are outlined in that plan. We have several in here that are listed as yellow, not because we didn't achieve anything, but more so that we didn't fully achieve everything maybe that we wanted to. But we certainly made progress in terms of restructuring our budget. And you saw the output of that in our budget process just a few months ago. We have developed some internal teams and been working on employee engagement. And also our preventive maintenance program has continued to progress. We also have some other items listed toward the bottom of the list that are either orange or red, meaning we really did not make the level of progress that we had wanted to. And again, for the orange ones, that's not to say that we didn't make any progress, but not the level of progress that we had hoped for. For process improvements, we had envisioned a targeted program where we would establish 3 areas that we would focus on. We didn't achieve that, but certainly there have been process improvements all over the organization. Things that we've learned as a result of how we operate in the pandemic, things that we've implemented to become more paperless or move toward being paperless. So there have been process improvements, but the real focused structured program didn't get put into place. Asset management is another area. We're spending a lot of time on asset management and a lot of focus on it, and just kind of wanting to take that next step to put it into a standardized approach for all of our assets across the whole organization. We have a lot more work to do there. And then finally, the last item is a strategic plan, which is marked red, because we planned to kick that off early last year and made the conscious decision to put that on the back burner and allow us to focus on operating in the context of the pandemic and not put the time into that in 2020. Now, looking at the yellows and oranges and reds, don't want to suggest by any means that we didn't achieve what we wanted to in 2020. I think it's clear that we achieved 2 very important things and we made progress in other areas. And there are a lot of other things that we achieved in addition to working on these items. One key example in 2020, putting the new park pump station online was a huge accomplishment. And these are just some photos of the interior of the new park pump station, which is, a vast improvement for our operations. We had the ability to connect a very large new customer to our system, and that's a result that we achieved primarily due to the work on the regional sewer capacity plan and being able to work with the regulators and the region on how to allow that to happen while we're planning the next phase of sewer capacity. We've talked several meetings now about operational emergencies and some very large main breaks that were unprecedented for our operation, and one at 17th Walnut, and then the one at Christmas time on Devonshire Road. Pretty significant efforts that drew our attention, as well as a very large storm that we faced in August. Again, some pretty unprecedented flooding that our system faced in dealing with the aftermath of that event. And couldn't talk about 2020 without at least mentioning the pandemic and how that has impacted our operation. So significantly in terms of how we work together and how we keep our employees safe while we're completing the mission of the organization. So I present those to you just to kind of put it in context of what we were doing in 2020 and the goals that we set out for ourselves in January of 2020 certainly had to be modified along the way as we dealt with the situations that we encountered throughout the year. overall, really pleased with being able to keep our focus on some of these things and make positive progress. We also have been working on key performance indicators, and this is a work in progress. Chris Mon and I routinely talk about these and what we want to see on our internal dashboards, and he works with lots of other parts of the organization to develop dashboards and data for operating use. But as an overall set of key performance indicators, we've settled on just a few of them that we wanted to present to you, and these are ones that we've shared with you before. What we've been trying to do while we're measuring the same items that we've talked about before, we're adding in data about the American Water Works Association benchmarking program. That's a new feature that we've added to our KPI dashboard or our program. So the first one relates to preventive maintenance, and the charts that you're seeing here are reflecting the employee hours that get logged in terms of their activities related to corrective maintenance, which is CM, or preventive maintenance, which is PM. And the American Water Works Association benchmark is measured based on employee hours. So we've shifted our measure to match the AWWA benchmark so we can compare ourselves to other utilities. And you'll see on the left side of the screen, the median benchmark or performance level is 53% preventive maintenance time for utilities in the AWWA studies. And then the 70th percentile, so the higher performing utilities are achieving 66% of preventive maintenance hours. So you can see the top graphs show the city division, the bottom graph shows the suburban division. We'll work toward getting those combined into a single measure over time, but having it broken out gives us a good look at where there are differences and what we're seeing in the different operating units. You can see our mix, our result is mixed, where the suburban division seems to be doing significantly more preventive maintenance than corrective maintenance. The dark blue bars represent the preventive maintenance. And then the city division shows a different result. The challenge here, and I'll look to Chris or Mark or John, others on the call, if you'd like to add some color here, is that this measure is drawing data directly from our CityWorks maintenance management system. And so it's only going to show results of work that is logged in our CityWorks system. So we believe there's a fairly significant amount of preventive maintenance work that's done, especially in the city division, that is not logged in CityWorks. So as we try to incorporate that data into CityWorks, we'll see these bars move over time. And Chris or John, do you want to share anything about this one?
I'll jump in if you don't mind, John. You're absolutely right, Lisa. Just this past week or so, Mark and I found another set of excellent information and data that needs to be incorporated into CityWorks. So it's an ongoing process. And generally every few weeks, months, we kind of sit down with Jerry or Nate from the suburban team or Jason and his supervisors from the city team and kind of review what they're doing. And that's kind of when we find out that, oh yeah, we do. We have a spreadsheet on, our shared drive that we track this information. And then it becomes a project for, the guys on our team to integrate it and get it scheduled and get it rolled into the preventative maintenance program. So it's a work in progress. I think it will be for a while. But if everybody looks close at the trend lines, we're definitely moving in the right direction. PM hours are going up and CM hours are declining, which is, exactly where we want to be spending our time and money.
Thanks, Chris. The financial measures, don't need to spend a whole lot of time on these because we see these every month from Ed. We have debt service coverage ratio and the days cash on hand. We focused on those two as being really key benchmarks, and AWWA does include those in their benchmarking program. So you can see for debt service coverage, the median result from those utilities that participate in the program is 2.34, and the 75th percentile is 4.29. We're not achieving even the median benchmark for Allentown or our suburban division, but overachieving in our suburban wastewater division. And we talk about those every month as we're looking at some of the different impacts or factors that impact this result in those three areas. For the days cash on hand, we have the median result for the AWWA program is 321 days, and the 75th percentile is 598 days. So we look at this also for the three areas, Allentown, suburban, and wastewater. And again, there's different impacts or different factors that impact our results here. And in particular, just point out that the suburban wastewater results are driven pretty significantly by the intermunicipal agreements that we have in place that set how we establish rates and recapture operating costs. So there's not as much room to influence those numbers as we might have in the suburban division for water. And then the city division, that's something that we're keenly watching and monitoring as we move forward with some of the revenue enhancements that came out of the settlement approach with Allentown. Ed, do you have anything you'd like to say at a high level on this one?
No, actually, we see these every month. I mean, the city number is something that we've talked about pretty much every month. And as we go along in the agreement and all these things kick in, that will get better. Wastewater, a little bit below the target, but quite frankly, we have some, I'll call it invested money. That's not part of this equation, so I'm not as antsy about this one. And suburban water is looking good, and quite frankly, we have some invested money in that as well. So all in all, I would say we're not in a bad cash position, and the DSCRs are certainly above covenant requirements, so that's all good.
Thanks, Ed. The next one that we're showing is product quality and compliance. And for this one, I opted not to show the AWWA benchmark charts because it's not very detailed. Essentially what the benchmark for AWWA is relates to the number of days that the system is in compliance. And that's very good information, and we have that tracked. But because we spend a fair amount of time every month looking at operational data that John presents and other things, other projects that we have that are focused on these things, I wanted to provide the data specifically by the violation type. So bypasses, notices of violation from DEP, your sanitary sewer overflows, your boil advisories, and permit exceedances for wastewater. And you can see we've had mixed results over the last 4 years, but certainly working on improving in the area of bypasses and SSOs and wastewater permit exceedances as a result of all the work that's being done on the regional system. And impacting these numbers even more is the work on the Heidelberg and Lynn Township systems, where we have pretty frequent issues with bypasses and permit issues. So this is our look back on that one. Andrew, do you have anything you'd like to add on that one?
No, I think you covered it all. But yes, the majority of the permit exceedances would be from Heidelberg. So it's a little deceiving on that end.
Yeah. Thank you. Our next set of data points relates to employees. And for this one, we're still working on how we would track or what the results would be that we want to show. But this is a good snapshot in time of where we are with our total positions, our vacancies, our age and tenure statistics, as well as the overall vacancy rate here at LCA. Again, this is a snapshot in time. So currently we have 10 vacancies that we're working on filling. Some of them are vacancies from current positions that have been where an employee has left the organization. And a couple of them are new positions that we've added as a result of the budget process. So working on filling those and tracking that as a result. We've had 2020 has been a pretty challenging year in terms of turnover and also recruiting and just keeping those positions filled. It's just been a different environment to try to do that work because of the safety issues and how do you interview people, all those kinds of challenges. But making progress on those, filling those positions.
Lisa, what is your average turnover rate in LCA?
This is like I said, this is a new one that we're tracking, so we don't have historical data on this one. We'd have to go back and look over some time. But what we have here at 6% is a snapshot as of the end of 2020, and that is higher than it's ever been. We typically only have 1 or 2 vacancies here and there throughout the year that we're trying to fill. So to have 10 vacancies at a time is an awful lot for us. We can work on adding that data into this information over time. The last one we have is employee safety. We wanted to add this to raise the visibility on this one. And we're measuring it 2 different ways. The near misses is a total count of near misses. So how many near misses were recorded in the years that are shown here. This goes back to 2015. Difficult to compare this to other utilities of different sizes, but this is the way AWWA measures it. I like the recordable incidents a little better because it normalizes the data into a rate per 100 employees. And that's what's included in the AWWA benchmarking program. So the median result for the water utilities in that program is 5.1 recordable incidents per 100 employees, and the 75th percentile is 3.4. So our result in 2020 was 3.96, so just under 4. So we're not where we'd like to be, which is 0, but certainly comparable to other utilities and trying to make progress on that. We can see over time it's been up and down, and trying to make more downward progress on that. So those are the 5 main benchmarks or key performance indicators that we look at every year with all of you. Actually, I believe the safety one is a newer one that we've added to, as I said, raise the visibility on that one. But we'll continue to refine those and present those to you and any others that we might be interested in showing. I wanted to kind of shift gears and talk a little bit about what's next, because our LCA 2020 plan was a 3-year plan that ended last year. And so what are we doing now and in the future in the area of goal setting and strategic planning? With 3 main categories of things to review with you. First is the organizational goal for this year, which is our strategic plan update. And that will be an organization-wide priority for us this year. We also have some internal organizational initiatives that the entire group is going to be working on together. I'm going to go through these just briefly in a little bit, but providing additional support for our management team, re-engagement of our employee base, and the process improvement program. And along with these organizational initiatives, we will keep working on some of the key areas in our LCA 2020 plan that we didn't complete. We'll keep working on those items. We'll keep refining our key performance indicators. And then we have a rather lengthy list of big goals that all of the department leaders are working on, and I'll show you what that looks like in a couple of slides. We'll have a busy year in 2021 for sure. Talking about strategic planning, just a little bit of detail what we're trying to do here. We want to start with kind of the basics of mission and values. Who are we? What do we stand for as an organization? What do we want the future to look like? So creating that clear mission, value statement, clear vision statement. But then we want to dive a little deeper into setting some specific goals in a concise or defined time period, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. And then developing the implementation plan. How do we actually implement the things that we want to achieve, and refining those measures along the way so we know if we were successful. We have a few key steps to put this together. And as Brian mentioned, we have a subcommittee of the board already established. That's Brian, Amir, and Norma. And we'll be meeting a little bit later today to kick this discussion off, and bring in a consultant as soon as we can identify the right partner for this. And then we have really three main steps along the way. So gathering some feedback, both internal and external, doing key stakeholder interviews, getting input from the board and employees, and some internal assessments. Then we'll work on the plan development, aligning the vision for the next 5 to 10 years, aligning our measures to our goals, and working on how to track and communicate our progress along the way. And then the real detailed action plan that we want to develop, we want to have a good understanding of the resource requirements to achieve our goals, and also do some work on financial analysis. And we want to have at least the 2022 action plan developed in time for the budget development process, which will start this summer. A couple of those organizational initiatives, and I'll go over pretty quickly. The first one is providing support for managers. And what we mean by that is looking toward our management team for their role in the organization. What are the training requirements that they have to achieve the expectations for managers? We have several areas in the organization where we don't have a lot of policies and procedures. So develop some policies and procedures that will help them be effective in their jobs, and provide some support to them through coaching and mentoring. And ultimately allow the managers to be accountable for help the managers be accountable for their team performance. We have a internal team established for this already. We've been working on some key areas, and I really want to give this some focus in 2021. Employee re-engagement is really important also for this year. 2020 was very difficult from an employee engagement standpoint, with everyone who could work remotely working outside of their own office, not seeing employees, and yet having employees who were required to work on site. It's a lot of challenges with communication and teamwork. So wanting to spend some time in 2021 re-engaging with employees, listening to their experiences, and helping them to remember all the good things that we do and why our work is so important, and understand how we can be better in the future. And then the last organization-wide initiative for 2021 is related to process improvement. And we've been working on this as a leadership team already. We've identified about 100 different ideas on areas that we need to improve process. It's a really big area that's created a pretty exciting dialogue on our team, and just needing to find a way to actually implement those, find some some smaller areas where we can have quick wins, and then select one, two, or three larger ones that we can tackle and really see some big progress on those and generate that excitement about positive change in the organization. We do have on this call Chris Mullen, Mark Bowen, and Phil DePoe, who have expressed a great interest in this area and will likely be serving as providing some dedicated time into this effort. So looking forward to helping them achieve some big things here in process improvement. It'll be organization-wide, though, in terms of the scope of what we're looking to work on.
Lisa, this is Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Could you just give me an example of some of these big ones, these big process improvements that you're thinking of doing? Like, for
Sure.
instance, what do you have in mind?
Well, the one that we've talked quite a bit about and is already somewhat underway, it relates to our sewer signatory billing process. And that is a very manual process that requires inputs from 15 different municipalities, and very spreadsheet based and very old systems in place to calculate the flows and the loads that generate approximately 30% of our revenue through this old spreadsheet system. So working on trying to identify how we can streamline the collection of data from the signatories, as well as the input of data and the processing of that information.
Well, I wish you luck on that one.
Yeah, it's a big one. That definitely falls in the category of one of the big ones. We have lots of small ones too. As an example, one we've already achieved, Chris put together a computer or electronic call log system for our incoming customer calls, because for many, many years we had our staff manually handwriting call logs of customers that they were in contact with. So having them log them electronically into a database that saves a lot of steps in terms of data entry and more real-time look at the customers that are contacting us by the phone. So that was relatively simple to put together, but a great improvement that has helped our team tremendously. So we'll look for those smaller ones along the way too to get some positive change going.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So then I mentioned that we have lots of departmental, or I kind of call them operational goals, because they're not so much focused on the organization, but really the nuts and bolts of how we operate and the projects that we need to implement. There's 15 of them listed here. Want to make sure you realize they're not in priority order. They're kind of across the board, so you can see the scope of some of the things that we're working on. Things like succession planning, our Trexlertown interceptor bottleneck issue that we've been talking about at some of our board meetings, project cost accounting, like really spans the whole organization. Do want to highlight that we have the Heidelberg and Lynn Township sewer system improvements as one of our priorities for 2021, and that will impact our compliance results as well. If you'd like to know more about any of these, we're happy to talk about them, but just wanted to put them up here so you can see the breadth of the things that we need to accomplish this year. So obviously it's going to be a busy year, and there's a lot of work that the whole team will be putting into achieving these goals. And I'm also looking forward to working with the board and some of our stakeholders on our strategic plan in 2021, and allow us to really look multiple years into the future to set goals and measures for our future. That's what I have for today, sort of a quick look back at 2020 and a look forward at everything that's on our plate for 2021. happy to entertain any questions or discussion.
Lisa, I just have a comment. The one slide you had some SSOs and permit limit violations in 2020. I would guess if you subtracted that extraordinary August storm event, that those numbers probably would be much lower. Just an observation. I would think that contributed to a lot of those numbers.
Yeah,
Andrew,
the majority
go ahead.
of them were from those major storms.
Can you say again? Sorry.
Sorry, the majority of them were from those major storms in the fall.
Yeah, so it wasn't like a continuing issue. That's what I kind of expected. It was just when you get 6 inches of rain or whatever we got that day in August, I'm sure that that did a lot of damage. So, all right, thank you.
It doesn't seem to take much to have a problem at Heidelberg, though. You know, that's my pet issue.
Yep.
Lisa, I have a question concerning where it says employee statistics on vacancies. How do we develop a pool, or where do we locate employees for the LCA?
We have a third-party firm that helps us recruit. So
Okay.
for each position, we kind of have a different strategy based on the kind of position and where we think candidates might come from.
Okay.
Hello, Lisa. It's Scott again.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lisa, you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Scott.
On the corrective maintenance statistics in the city, what are some of the examples of the corrective maintenance that we're doing in the city? I imagine it's because we have an old system there that needs a lot of repairs. But for example, what are some of the corrective maintenance projects that are taking up a lot of our hours in the city?
So I would actually like John to address that one if you can.
Well, there's different things. I mean, we have a ton of preventative maintenance work orders that we take care of in the plants, but we always have breakdowns and things like that become corrective action. Maybe Chris can help me out. I'm not exactly sure when he was saying that some of the things need to get into the system yet. Maybe there's some things that I'm not exactly sure about that aren't in yet, so I could better answer that question.
Yeah,
but
I think you definitely are right on track, John. So the way it works is anything that is not scheduled, that the guys get called out and a ticket gets created, gets tracked as corrective maintenance, comma, any preventative maintenance that requires more than 90 minutes of work or a separate work order ticket also subsequently counts as corrective maintenance. So preventative maintenance to us is something that's scheduled, something that we could estimate time and cost, and anything outside of that standard scope then gets tracked as corrective maintenance, which is why, you know, your statement is probably true, Scott, that the system is a little bit more aged than a suburban system. But, you know, bear in mind, this also does take into account the water treatment facility as well as the wastewater treatment plant. So, you know, when you're looking at total hours there, it's for the whole of the city and not just for a distributions and collection system.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Sure. Well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Chris,
Yes,
this is Brian. Do you think that the city and the suburban division employees are using the system the same way, that same kind of activities are being reported as corrective action or as preventive action in both systems?
I believe we're close. So a lot of that is based on Mark Bone and Billy Shantz, who's not on the call, but the way they set the back end up forces categories and forces kind of a similar structure. So when they're recording a certain kind of break fix work orders, they're the same. I think what we need to get better at is total buy-in and usage. I still think that there are, stuff that happens on both sides of the fence that are not being put into CityWorks, where it's just easier to do a phone call, send the guy out, and they just track it in a spreadsheet. And that's kind of on me to make sure that we do find all of those extraneous processes that still need to be put back into CityWorks. So we have, one version of the truth, if you will, one place for all the data, one place for all the reporting, rather than going to 10 different spreadsheets and then CityWorks to get actual counts and hours.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Lisa, any further discussion? Any board member questions? Can we move on?
Yep,
okay.
we can. Thank you.
All right. Continuing under the action and discussion items, we have an item under Water Suburban Division, fixed base meter reading stations design phase, seeking approval.
Yes, this is Capital Works Department project. And what this is for implementation of an advanced metering infrastructure, also called fixed base system in Suburban Division. This is for design phase. And what this involves is the design and permit approval of various towers to be erected across our Suburban Division. And what it will achieve is a wireless communication of metering data, which eliminates the need for LCA personnel to drive around and collect the meter data. So that meter gets communicated wireless to LCA main office, and then the customer billing system is optimized for via use of that wireless communication system. So we call it fixed base, also referred to as AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure. So what we're asking for is approval of design phase to get this project up and running. This has been on the LCA books for a long time as a wish list item, and I'm feeling pretty optimistic that we're getting around to it. We have the meters. One of Amy's projects recently was the replacement of meter readers to enable compatibility with this system as the long range goal. So Amy's going to talk a little bit more in detail about this project for design phase of the fixed base meter reading system. Amy?
Okay. Well, you kind of went over pretty well the background and what the system will do. We reached out to 4 design engineers to get prices from them. We had asked ones that have some experience in getting plan approvals in primarily upper and lower country, because that's where the majority of our sites would be. One of the firms declined to give us a price. They cited their workload as the reason. So we had prices come in from Cowan Associates, Mazer Consulting, and Barry Isett and Associates. Mazer Consulting was in the middle of the price range at $102,680. However, their proposal showed that they have significant experience in getting approvals for telecommunication sites. They've been doing it for over 20 years. They've done over 4,000 sites. They have their own actual telecommunications group in their company of over about 50 people just doing telecommunications work. So we feel that they have quite a bit of experience. I was actually pleasantly surprised at the amount of experience they have in this. And we're looking at approximately 8 sites in the suburban division. As we meet with the engineer and with census and fine tune and look at the sites more, that may change. It might go up, might go down one, but overall we're pretty comfortable with about 8 sites. And that will give us, once they're all installed, that would give us coverage to about 93% of the suburban division. We will not get coverage in some of our small outlier systems like
Beverly Hills,
and the one up in Northampton County. I can't think of the name of it.
Clearview Farms.
Clearview Farms.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And then there's always going to be some areas within the Central Lehigh division, just because of topography, we might have some difficulty getting service to. But overall, we're looking at like 93% coverage.
Okay, if I could add, Amy, that there was a preliminary propagation study that was done by census, and that's how we think it's going to be about 8 sites, and it's based on line of sight communication, and that study was done within the last year or so. So that's where we think we know where the sites are, but as we get into this process, it may become difficult with some of the municipal approvals and the zoning approvals. So we may have to look at alternate sites. But right now we're looking at sites where we own the property.
Yeah, specifically some of our reservoir sites, because a few of the sites we can actually use the reservoir and just mount an antenna to the reservoir rather than constructing a pole for it. So we're starting out with sites that we currently either own or have an easement on, and we're trying to minimize the number of sites and maximize coverage, and also keep in mind how easy or difficult it may be to get approvals at some of these.
Amy, this is Scott. I have a question on this. How tall are these towers going to be? The ones that are going to be ground based?
They vary. We're looking at right now, I think the highest one is 105 feet. Some of the others are like 80. And then there's some that are only 45 from the ground that would be mounted on a reservoir, so because we already have 30 to 40 feet of reservoir to give us that.
When we go to the township zoning boards and other planning commissions or whatever to get approval, are we going to have our own people there at those meetings in addition to the consultant being there? I'm just wondering, is this consultant competent in taking this stuff through a township meeting? Or we're going to have some of our own staff people at the township meetings?
Yeah, we would have.
We
would have our own staff. We would have the engineer, and then a solicitor as well for some of these meetings. But they do have quite a bit of experience in getting these approvals, and that's why we wanted we wanted somebody that specifically had telecommunications experience. Because we know that sometimes they can be a little controversial depending on where you're citing them.
Right. Yeah, if you need a zoning permit and it's not permitted by right, there's going to have to be a public hearing on the application. It'll have to be done either through special exception or conditional use, but that'll depend upon the zoning regulations of the municipality and how they define these particular antennas. There are, if it's considered a wireless communication, for instance, there's federal laws that can preempt the local regulation. So I'd be interested to see how these things are defined, and then each municipality will have different rules concerning the zoning regulations.
Yes, and I did reach out to people in both Upper and Lower McConchy Townships to talk to them a little bit about it, and they do recognize that this isn't. It's a little different than telecommunications for cell phone usage. I mean, they understand that we're a water company, and that that it is an important use.
Well,
and
that's another important point, is that a lot of times there's exemptions or different rules for when a utility is involved, or a public service business. So that will come into play as well.
Right. And this does represent an enhancement of customer service because we can get real-time monitoring of water usage. So we certainly have some justifications.
So Chuck, as Kevin, I've got a quick question on that. One of the things we talked about a number of times in these kinds of projects was to provide in the write-up some measure of, what's the monetary benefit of making this investment? And I was just intrigued by that. So it seems like it's saving mobile reading of meters, which I assume is people driving around with some kind of pickup device. And instead of that, we get it automated. And I'm just wondering if you could say more about the benefit side of the investment.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly correct, Kevin, in that we would not need, except for the outlying systems that we won't be able to pick up, we won't need people to go around and monitor the meter data. Also, it optimizes the customer billing process, because that electronic transmission of the data makes it more user friendly to produce the bills to the customers. So unfortunately, I don't have that quantified how it will save man hours. I mean, we will still need somebody to go around and meet, and like I said, read the outlying systems, but it will free up time for that person to do other duties related to the meter program. So it will certainly optimize that system for us.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to overkill that. I just think we should have in mind, if we think we're generating a saving, what that is, and versus the $1 million odd that we're going to spend to do this.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We can quantify that.
I think that when you quantify it, you should include final bills, because that really gets expensive to go out there and get a single reading because somebody's final billing.
Right.
I was going to jump in, Dick, kind of echoing what you're saying. We do, for our suburban division, which this project is focused on, our suburban division, we're doing between 150 and 200 final bills every month. And so that's, we try to work those into the routes of our staff who are out there in the field anyway, but it certainly is a pretty significant effort on his part to go out and get those individual reads on those days that we need a final bill read. And we also have that same employee reading meters 5 to 7 days a month, driving around the service territory, trying to pull them through the vehicle route. So there's some pretty significant time that we'll be able to reduce if we can have the system in place.
Just to follow up on Kevin's question, and I don't know if this is realistic these days anymore, but can the towers be used by another provider for anything that you could rent or lease to them for some reason for any other purpose? I don't know anything about this, so I'm just asking the question.
That's a good question, Jeff. I'm sure they could if they're adequate height for the needs of the other utility, and that the structure would support whatever equipment they would need to hang on it. But that is a way to get back some of the investment.
Yeah,
Amy, I don't know if you know anything more about that.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Census has indicated that there is, that possibility, and even the possibility that your cellular tower can pick up for other water systems. So if we have neighboring water systems that eventually want to go that route, I mean, we can somehow rent or get that information to other local municipalities for their systems once we have the initial installation.
Well, once the pole is established, wireless communications companies have preferable rights to use it under the zoning laws. In other words, you don't have to reestablish the propriety of the zoning use. The wireless company can go and do what's called co-location on the pole. In fact, how much you can get and rent may be actually controlled by the federal rules, and I don't think it's great, but it does. Once the pole is established, it does create the ability for co-location on the pole.
Lisa, I'm going to build up on what Kevin said. Obviously that's a great project to do, but this is a productivity project. As a part of the proposal, as Kevin indicated, not only cost has to be there, has to have a equal balance of, what is the dollar amount of FTE of productivity. Because if the productivity is not there, then we have to look at the project a different way. It is very difficult at least for me, to vote on something without recognizing what is the productivity for this project when we're spending $1 million right now.
I think just from a standpoint of the board, I mean, each of the projects that are presented by the staff to the board probably should have that element in there that you justify the cost benefit analysis of a project. And not picking on you, Amy or Chuck, it's just that that's just good practice for us to understand. And if it's not going to be reducing manpower, it's going to be allowing us to shift manpower to other areas that could use the extra time and effort. I'd like to also question, just kind of a counter to what Jeff was saying, was why can't this technology be used on existing towers rather than building new towers? There's towers everywhere, and so why not attach ours to their towers instead of putting up new structures?
I believe this consultant is going to look into that, Brian, and possibly leasing from an existing tower. The propagation study looked at covering our system based on the properties that we own, but part of the consultant scope will look into possibly sharing a location with a tower that's already pre-existing.
You would think that would be the cheapest alternative.
Yeah,
to building our own and maintaining our own.
Mm-hmm.
Other board questions? I want to get into, sorry, I kind of jumped in on my own question here, but we're recommending not the lowest bidder. And that's $27,000 difference. And part of our responsibility is to make sure that we're minimizing the amount of money that we spend for our customers. And so we really need to get into justifying the $27,000 difference between the low bidder and the one that you're recommending. So can you further quantify that delta? Because each of these would have been pre-qualified beforehand that you felt was capable of being able to do the job. So you're talking about an efficiency of $27,000 in order to get permits that may not have been gotten by the other firm. So can we spend a little time on that as well?
You're right, Brian. We did pre-qualify these these firms based on experience with land developments and getting approvals through the municipal channels. So they were all judged to be qualified. The difference between, and Amy can speak in more detail to this, but the difference that I saw between Callan and Mazer is just the sheer number of approvals that Mazer has been successful in getting, and the fact that they have a dedicated team that does just this. We feel set them apart and would in the long run save time and LCA staff cost in procuring these approvals more expediently. Amy, do you want to add on that?
Yeah, that is the basic difference between them, where the other firms demonstrated, that yes, they do have experience with land development approvals in this area. They did not really show much in telecommunication type land development approvals, which again can sometimes get a little tricky with other items that may be required, FAA approval, depending on the height of the tower, things like that. The Mazer seemed to show, they've been doing this for so long in so many different locations and stuff. They have a very streamlined process for doing it. It's also very time. They've short amount of time so getting their approvals. They've just been doing it a long time, and they seem to really have their act together in doing that. And I think that should other things jump out, in trying to get these approvals, depending on what these different municipalities require, I don't think it's going to be any issue for Mazer to handle. I just have a much higher comfort level in their capability, particularly with telecommunications.
We're going to save Michael's time.
I want to ask a question based on what Brian asked. If we can rent or use one of the existing towers, it would have a huge impact on our capital costs. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So do you think it makes sense that we spend a little money to see if we can rent one of the existing tower first and then bring it back to the board? Because there is a huge range on the capital, and we don't know which direction we're going to go.
Well, that part of that investigation is in the consultant's scope already to look into that. So we to do that evaluation, we almost need to get a consultant on board to help us with that.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just trying to see the phases. It does make sense that what we have to approve at the board, does it make sense that we first have a knowledge? Because it's two different paths, whether we're going to go this direction or that direction, and the money could be 10,000 versus 50,000, 200,000, right? So I'm just struggling.
Yeah. Well, the way the proposal is set up, Amir, it's a charge per site and based on a certain number of meetings. So if a particular site is not necessary and we can lease from a utility at an existing tower, then that money would not be spent. The consultant money, because it's set up per site. So if we don't do a site, we don't pay for it.
I think we also have to look at too that depending on we have kind of initial layout of sites. there may be towers in the area of those sites, there may not be. So we need to first identify where the towers are, and also if they do accept other utilities on their tower. You know, they're owned by different entities. So I know Census had told me that they have had some agreements between them and Crown Castle, I want to say. That's a tower or a cellular provider. They may not have agreements with other ones. So it is a process to look into whether there are even towers available to access.
Chuck, what's the urgency of this project? Is this something that has to be done now, or can wait to move forward another month?
I wouldn't say it's super urgent, Brian. We do have a budget for this design phase this year set up in 2021. We'd like to get a good amount of this done this year, but it's kind of a self-imposed urgency. There's nothing critical with our meter reading protocol that it's going to tap out at the end of the year. I mean, we can continue doing what we were doing. We would just like to get some progress this year, because it's been, like I said at the outset, it's been on the books for a long time to do this.
Can I ask a question, a clarifying question, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
The work that Mazer would do in this proposal, is it the intention that from that work we would then have the information we need to know what the construction cost is in terms of how many sites we're going to build, how many sites we're going to lease, and have a more refined cost for that $800,000 that's in there? And I guess the reason I'm
not seeing 800. Oh, you mean in the plan, in the capital plan?
Yeah, your capital project authorization shows $800,000 for construction.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm getting to the questions that are being asked, which I think are good questions, especially for a project like this. You know, doing some type of analysis of the productivity savings or the gains that we'll get from doing a project like this. It feels like at this point we don't know what we're comparing it to because we don't have the data from this work.
That's correct. We really don't know the cost until we get a consultant to do the evaluation and the legwork to see how many existing tower sites we can lease and what's going to be required with the municipal approvals. Then they can estimate the construction cost. But we don't know if it's going to cost $1 million at this point to fully implement this, or $500,000. And it's not something that we can know right now. We have to get into the weeds, so to speak, and be able to sort this thing out and find out what we can reuse and what's going to be required to get the municipal approvals.
I think the board has asked a number of questions that maybe could use a little more time. Are you hearing me, by the way? I just got a notice that the internet was being held back. I'm considering that we delay the decision on this one and get more information coming back from the staff. Anybody feel that that's not necessary? Or
yeah, I think it's a good idea. And to Kevin's point, what are the savings? And there's hard dollar savings, and there's quality savings and softer savings. But at what point does this not become a viable project, depending on the cost? At some point, it's not worth doing because of the cost of doing it compared to the savings. And so we should have a handle on, at least a ballpark on that.
Yeah, I'm feeling that it's absolutely necessary to do the project. I'm just not comfortable with, the amount of information that we are kind of questioning at this point in time, that I think that a little more work and a little more preparation for that would help us better make a better decision for ourselves and our customers.
Do you think the extra work that you're asking for is more expensive than the presumed savings, et cetera, et cetera? The conflict with existing plans for accomplishment? I'm all in favor of doing it.
Other thoughts?
My vote, I'm with Kevin and Ted. I think there's more work need to be done here before I can vote yes on this project.
This is Scott. I would have to agree with that too. I'd like to see some sort of cost benefit analysis. Doesn't the LCA know right now about how much we spend a year in employee time to read these meters? Do we have some idea what it's costing us yearly right now to read these meters?
We should be able to get that information from customer service. Capital Works does not know.
Yeah, that would be a fairly easy question to answer. I think what I'm struggling with is we don't know what we're comparing it to because we don't have the results of this study. So can we justify $1 million? Can we justify $500,000? We don't know what the target is in terms of productivity gains to make this project a go, because we need this information in order to know what the project is going to cost. But I'm not saying we shouldn't delay and do more homework. I want to put it in context of we're going to have more answers after we do this work than we have today.
Lisa, we're having a meeting in 2 weeks. Will 2 weeks really make a difference if we just table it till our next meeting?
That I don't know that would be an issue. No.
Jeff, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, the majority of the projects that we approve are regulatory driven, fixing overflows, doing things like that. And it doesn't really matter what the cost benefit is. We don't need that because we don't have a choice. We might have a choice, but it's not a good one, right? But in this case, I guess I would lean toward just getting a little more information in the next 2 weeks, as everybody else suggested. But let's, like I said, for the other projects that are more regulatory driven, I just don't think we need Chuck and Amy to spin their wheels to get a bunch of stuff that we don't really need anyway. So if we just keep that on mind project by project, that's my only comment.
It's a good thought, Jeff. Thank you. All right, I guess we want to have a little more information, a little more response to the questions that were raised by the board members today. If you sorry about that, but I think that we ought to table this until we get that information presented. I recognize that it's not going to be cast in concrete. There's going to be a lot of questions remaining, but just a little more structure behind it would help us. Thank you.
Brian, this is Scott again. Just one comment I wanted to make is that I have no problem spending the extra money for Mazer. If our staff feels that they're much more competent to handle this whole thing, I have no problem with spending. If it gets to this point, I have no problem with using Mazer as a second lowest bidder.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
Yeah, there are times when it warrants going to the next lowest bidder and be able to get more things done in a quicker amount of time. Time is money, and so we'll have, when we get the final information coming back to us, or at least not a little more structured information, I think that we can make that decision. All right, Lisa, we're going to move on to the next topic, I guess. If you don't mind. All right, I have to go back to my agenda. All right, nothing under wastewater. We have a monthly project updates. Item number 6, February report was attached to our email.
Yes, I'll just review that briefly. It seems like we're going to have a pretty heavy agenda for our next meeting on the 22nd. So you'll see under finance and administration, we have a couple of housekeeping kinds of items with the nomination of officers and a resolution regarding destruction of documents. We also will roll out the first presentation on our capital plan, 5-year capital plan, which will be our suburban division. We'll do the Allentown division presentation in March. Underwater, we'll regroup internally and determine if the fixed base meter reading system will come back on for the 22nd in light of what we need to do to answer some of the questions. And under wastewater, we have one item that's listed here, but there's actually going to be a second item for the meeting on the 22nd. Both of these items will be on for that meeting. One is the regional sewer capacity model, the hydraulic model calibration project. We've been talking about that over the last several meetings. And then we also have a second item that will be added related to having a consultant who will do some very specific I&I analysis for some of the municipalities that are gathering that data as part of our flow monitoring project. So an awful lot on the agenda for the next meeting, and looking forward to those discussions. If there's any questions on the information items, happy to try to answer them.
Just also keep in mind that next meeting we elect the officers for the board, and that Norma was the person going to collect any requests for any interest in different positions on the board. Every one of them is always open. So if you have any desires to take a position of one of the officer positions, then please let her know so she can present a listing of nominees for the next meeting. Any other questions on the monthly project updates?
Yes, Brian, I have one question on the Trexlertown project. The storage facility, it looks like we're expecting a draft report this month. Are we going to be getting that from Arcadis?
Phil, can you jump in on the status of the Trexlertown project, please?
Sure. Yes. I may need Amy and Chuck to clarify something, but Scott, HCR was tasked with looking at the Trexlertown bottleneck, and I believe their deliverable is going to be given shortly. Is that right, Amy and Chuck?
Yeah, that's correct, Phil. We're expecting it any day now.
Okay. And then then there's more to follow here, Scott, regarding the Trexlertown solution. It's premature to expand on it right now, but it's going to be more to follow shortly.
Certainly, I agree. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we jump down to staff comments.
I have just one comment, pardon me, and that is to let the board be aware that on Wednesday this week, I'll be attending the Lehigh County Commissioners General Services Committee meeting. That's at 6:45 on Wednesday by Zoom. And they've asked for 10 to 15 minute LCA update as part of our commitment to sharing information with the county. So between now and Wednesday, I'll figure out how to say all the good things that we're doing in 10 minutes and give that presentation to the General Services Committee Wednesday night. That's all I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Solicitor comments.
No comments, thank you.
All right, public comments.
Yes, hi, it's Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
How's everybody? I wanted to compliment you all on the excellent presentation for the 2020 action plan. I was really interested in the analysis of the corrective action, preventive maintenance hours spent, and really appreciated the focus on trying to capture all the data, realizing that maybe not everything was presented, captured all, and also assigning it to the correct category, either preventive or corrective. And I know that it's been a key factor in developing the 5-year capital planning. So it has a stepped up importance. I wonder, might have missed it, or if it's something that we're thinking about putting in the future, but to fold in material and equipment costs per those categories. And I just throw this out, you don't have to answer me now, but or maybe somebody can get back to us, but is it a consideration to add material and equipment costs by those categories of corrective and preventive?
I think we can answer that now. We do capture that, and I'll let Mark or Chris answer in more detail. Just the benchmark that AWWA uses, which we wanted to standardize for discussion, is based on hours, but the system collects a lot more information. Mark, you want to just share what it collects?
Yeah, you're correct, Liesl. So we do capture all the hours, equipment, material, all the vehicles we use against each of the categories. We can break it down per asset group, everything. So all of that is part of the system.
Okay. And quick follow-up then, I'm thinking from conversations we've had before with the capital planning staff that that's folded into the decision-making. I'm thinking that I've heard Chuck make mention of that. But am I correct in that that's part of the development of the capital plan?
I would say yes, absolutely. Based on, I mean, that kind of speaks right to, how much we're spending per asset group, and like Mark said, we do collect ELM and we can report out on it, but we generally report out on the AWWA standards for this type of meeting. But internally, we do use actual dollar amounts for conversation.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other public comments?
I have nothing.
Any other items for discussion on the board? Open, public? All right. Hearing none, we are adjourning this Zoom meeting of the Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors. And at, let's see, about 1:45, reconvening the executive session. The information was provided to the board members with Liesl's email on the 6th of February at 8:15 a.m. You need to reference the Zoom number to get to meet again. Executive session at 1:45. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Have a good day. Stay safe.